On December 19, 1972, three men climbed out of a Navy capsule in the Pacific Ocean: Gene Cernan, Harrison Schmitt, Jacques Schmitt, the last humans to have traveled beyond low Earth orbit, the last humans to have looked back at Earth from a distance so great the entire planet fit inside an outstretched thumb. They climbed into a recovery helicopter, flew to an aircraft carrier, and that was it. Humanity's furthest reach. And then, for reasons more complicated than the official story admits, we stopped. We pointed our rockets downward, built a space station 250 miles up, close enough that on a clear night you can watch it cross the sky from your backyard. And for 52 years, no human being has gone further than that. That is about to change. Sometime in 2026, 4 people will climb into a spacecraft called Orion, sit on top of the most powerful rocket NASA has ever built, and travel further from Earth than any human since 1972. They won't land on the moon, they'll loop around it, swinging within a few thousand miles of the lunar surface before slinging back toward Earth. At their furthest point, they'll be roughly 270,000 miles from home, further than any human in history. Looking down at a moon that fills their window and looking back at an Earth reduced to a small blue marble in absolute blackness. Their names are Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen, and the mission they're about to fly is simultaneously one of the most technically ambitious things NASA has attempted in half a century and one of the most important moments our species has reached since 1969. Here's what the press releases don't tell you. The rocket on that launch pad has a cost per launch that makes aerospace engineers wince. The mission architecture has been criticized for 15 years, and Artemis 1, the uncrewed test flight that preceded this, was the first time the Space Launch System flew at all. These 4 people are going further than any human in 52 years on a rocket that has flown exactly once. I'm not saying that to frighten you. I'm saying it because the real story of Artemis 2 isn't the inspirational poster version. It's about what it actually costs to push the edge of human reach, what it requires to send people somewhere they've never been and bring them back, and what happens if this works, because what comes after changes the trajectory of our species in ways most people haven't reckoned with. The mission profile is straightforward on paper. Launch from Kennedy Space Center, spend time in low Earth orbit running systems checks, verifying that life support, crew interfaces, and every human-specific system functions correctly with 4 actual humans aboard generating real heat, real carbon dioxide, real demands on the hardware. Then fire the engine toward the moon on a free return trajectory, the same design philosophy that saved Apollo 13. If the main engine fails after that burn, physics brings the crew home anyway. No additional engine burns required. The moon's gravity does the work. Then re-enter Earth's atmosphere at 25,000 miles per hour, heat shield taking 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, parachutes, Pacific splashdown, 10 days total. The crew itself is historically significant in ways that go beyond the mission patch. Victor Glover will be the first Black astronaut to travel to the moon. Christina Koch will be the first woman. Jeremy Hansen will be the first Canadian and first non-American to travel beyond low Earth orbit. The 12 people who walked on the moon between 1969 and 1972 were all white American men. The crew of Artemis 2 is a different statement about who goes next. Now the honest technical picture. The SLS is the most criticized rocket in American spaceflight history among certain serious engineers. Each launch costs somewhere between $2 and $4 billion. SpaceX's Falcon Heavy cost approximately $100 million. The SLS is up to 40 times more expensive per flight. That criticism is legitimate. The counter-argument is also legitimate. No currently operational commercial rocket meets the performance requirements for crewed lunar missions. Starship eventually might, at dramatically lower cost, and the Artemis architecture actually incorporates Starship as the lunar lander for later missions. But Starship isn't there yet for crewed deep space operations. The SLS exists now. It flew. It worked. There were also real technical concerns after Artemis 1. The heat shield charred in unexpected patterns during re-entry, differing from the thermal models used to predict its behavior. Not dangerous for the uncrewed flight, different from what the engineers expected. NASA investigated, identified the cause, and implemented changes for Artemis 2. This is precisely what uncrewed test flights are for. finding what the models missed before humans are aboard. The fact remains that Artemis 2 is a crewed test flight. The word test is in there for a reason. Here's the frame I think the cost debate usually misses. Artemis is not really about going to the moon. The moon is the proving ground. Every system being tested here, the heavy lift rocket, the deep space crew vehicle, the life support architecture beyond Earth's magnetic field, every single one is a prerequisite for what comes after, Mars. A permanent human presence beyond Earth, the only rational long-term response to the fragility of a civilization living on a single planet. You cannot go to Mars without first proving you can keep humans alive in deep space for extended durations. You cannot do that without going somewhere beyond low Earth orbit and testing the hardware for real. Artemis is that proof of concept. $93 billion spread across 15 years is not the cost of looping around the moon. It's the foundational investment in the capability required to eventually make our species something that can survive what happens to any single planet. What follows Artemis 2, if it succeeds, is Artemis 3, the first lunar landing since 1972. Then the Lunar Gateway, a small space station in lunar orbit. Then Mars. The architecture is built, the sequence is planned, but none of it moves forward without these 4 people climbing into Orion and proving the hardware works with humans inside it. There's something worth sitting with beyond all the technical details. Every Apollo astronaut who described looking back at Earth from lunar distance described the same thing. Not the moon, not the achievement. Earth. Small, blue, impossibly fragile against absolute black. The overview effect, the profound cognitive shift from seeing the planet whole from that distance, changed every person who experienced it. In 52 years, no new human being has been far enough away to see it. That's about to change. And through cameras aboard Orion capturing clarity that Apollo never could, so will we. 4 people are about to go further from Earth than any human in more than half a century, on a rocket that has flown once, toward a moon that nobody has orbited with a crew since 1972, as the first step in a sequence that, if it continues, eventually leads to humans living and working on other worlds. Gene Cernan stood on the lunar surface in December 1972, looked up at Earth before climbing the ladder for the last time, and said, "We shall return." It took 52 years. They're going back. And now I want to hear from you. Do you think Artemis 2 is worth the price tag, or is the money being spent in the wrong place? And what do you want to see covered next? The Artemis 3 lunar landing, the real plan for getting humans to Mars, or what would actually happen to civilization if we lost a crew out there? Drop it in the comments. Every response gets read. And if this kind of honest, no-hype breakdown of what's actually happening in space is what you're looking for, subscribe, because there is a lot more of this story left to tell.